for having me. Thank you for receiving us and welcoming us to share our research area. I'm a DPhil student from Oxford, and I'm actually in the Center for Doctoral Training in Cybersecurity. This research area is in cloud computing, but it has a very interesting introduction of supply chain into cloud computing and how, risk assessment. So that's why I'm hoping to pretty much give you an idea of what we're up to, what we're doing, what the research is about, and at the end of the day, we'll get some feedback and questions as you might find interesting. Okay. So, an overview, I'm going to talk about the cloud supply chain. I'm going to talk about assessing cloud risk and the gaps of assessing cloud risk. We're going to look at our proposed risk assessment model and walk us through a case study, which we developed, just a sample case study, and then we'll conclude this paper. One thing that I want you to hold on to throughout this talk is the fact that a cloud service is only as secure as the weakest member of its supply chain. It seems like a niche talk, but this is, look at it not just as chain, but look at this as a cloud service as a supply chain. All right? So if I ask each and every one of us here that what would happen to your cloud application if Amazon Web Service went down today? Do we all have an honest idea of what happens to our organization and what happens to our applications? What happens to the business? What is the profit like? What's going to change? Are the customers going to leave? Is the reputation going to drop? What's going to happen if we have an outage? That is based on Amazon Web Service. When you think of Amazon now, you have to start thinking critical service because of the number of hostings and the number of services that are relying on Amazon. So you just give us an idea of what, and obviously the latest ones, but these are things that have happened through the year. In 2016, we looked at the DNS outage. That was almost like a quarter of the internet went down when that happened. Twitter and all the other big names, CNN, Amazon. And also we had GitLab outage. Yes, we know DNS was the DNS, DDoS attack on the DNS infrastructure. GitLab was an employee, mistake. They were trying to do some database directory, cleanups, and they mistakenly deleted the production database. That led to an 18-hour outage of something that was supposed to be a code repository for many organizations. And Amazon S3, that's the popular one that happened last year. That there's an interesting story about Amazon, that particular one actually, which is where this service called Is It Down Right Now? It's supposed to be a monitoring service to monitor cloud applications. But because they relied on Amazon, and then Amazon was down, so they were down, and the people that relied on them were down. So when they tried to go to Is It Down Right Now, there was no service. So you don't even know if it was Is It Down Right Now's problem, or was it Amazon's problem, or was it our application that was just down, you see? So you require people to go to Twitter to tweet and ask themselves what's going on, before they found out the link between one service they always relied on and another.
Can I add one to that?
Yes, sir.
Which was that in that scenario, there were a huge number of people whose complete DR system was with Amazon.
Oh. So the production and DR were in Amazon?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
interesting. So that was a single point of failure everywhere.
It went down and down and down.
Yeah, so you can understand where we're going with this, right? Okay, so let's just walk through the rest of them. Instant paper outage, also one that was technical in nature, because this particular organization didn't understand the technicalities of the Amazon RDS system. So because they didn't know that they had to have like a different file size and all that, they were down for, I think the availability was, it took about 4 days to come to full availability. And then one login. One login was another interesting one because there was an attacker was able to compromise another cloud service API keys, found the keys, started doing reconnaissance on one login, and one login got impacted, and they had to clean up before they got back. And then, who would ever forget the BA one? BA is just last week, right? And that was another supply chain related thing because it was payment processing. The attacker got onto BA, compromised their website, made sure that they couldn't speak to PayPal or any other person, and then started harvesting data. You see? So supply chain is everywhere. It's very related to what we're talking about, and that's why, we've been able to bring up this thing. So what's cloud computing? Let's start from the basics. I know everyone is an expert in cloud or an expert risk manager, but let's just look at how cloud computing relates with this supply chain. So cloud computing is a model for enabling ubiquitous, on-demand, convenient network access to a shared pool of configurable systems. So IIS, SaaS, PaaS, we all know all that. That can be rapidly provisioned and can be released with minimal efforts, without even getting the service provider involved in it. And another definition, or a more simpler one, would be a computing resources management model for pooling and distributing resources on a massive scale. So, look at Amazon, look at Microsoft, look at Google, look at Rackspace. They're doing it on a big scale. We used to have an argument with someone that not every cloud provider is a cloud provider, because the idea of cloud provider is that you have a limitless access. But how the cloud providers get around that is that they do what we call, rapid provisioning, or they do the busting, right? I can cloud bust into, my services are not enough, I can get into Amazon, I can get into, so the elasticity is there. When I get too many people coming, I go out to other people to make it infinite, right? And when those people are no longer there, I return back to my single system. So what the cloud makes it important to do is that in this nature and in this time, we're working in this thing called an application economy. And the application economy is built out to allow those that are good at doing something to do it very well. So if you're an API provider, you can only do identity management, like one login, focus on that and do it well, right? And then you'll see that every other provider out there that don't want to worry themselves about building identity management will come to you, right? And so the idea of the cloud is that now, before you used to build applications from ground up, now you're just assembling applications. There are over 1 billion components out there that you can pick from. So a cloud provider that wakes up today says, okay, all I need to have is 20% genuinity from myself, my idea is 20%. The rest of it is all out there. I just pick them from different people and I merge them together. So I'm assembling it as against I'm building it up. Right? All application developers can relate with what I just said. So it allows concentration on core competencies and hence the supply chain argument to it. So, and then what's the supply chain then? Because it's right to define what the supply chain is before we then continue. So now we've painted what this cloud computing is, and what's now supply chain? The supply chain is a complex system of two or more parties that work together to provide, develop, host, manage, and monitor or use a cloud service. So anyone that is involved in the hosting, development, anyone that is involved in the managing or the monitoring, or the end user themselves are members of that supply chain, because it's an end-to-end part, right? So it could be logical, it could be physical, you might be directly connected, you might not. We painted some examples that could make you see how someone is supposed to be a top-tier provider, but suddenly affects your service because there is a link somewhere. So it could be logical. And then you can see from the next 5 characteristics, how they all buttress the supply chain idea, right? We talk broad network access, like we talked about, resource pooling, rapid elasticity, or measure service, and the others. And we see that this is also a multi-level situation, right? So it is not just one first-tier level or third party, it could be fourth party, right? So there's a heterogeneous group, and there's a network relationship. So there's too many interconnectedness in the supply chain and in cloud computing, which makes it very complex. We moved away from the traditional data centers, we moved into these dynamic, complex environments that is now, it could be here one day and it's there tomorrow. Today an application can say, okay, I don't like this identity provider, let's go somewhere else. And all they have to do is change an API key, or a link and the API key, and they're done. And the people and the users don't have to know what's going on. They just see that, they're logging in and life is good. So this is something that we used to paint what the cloud supply chain looks like. And the members, what really makes up this cloud supply chain. We look at the delivery platform, then you say, why can't the delivery platform be involved in the supply chain? But that's the only way you get access to the SaaS application, right? Because the SaaS application can only go to you on a laptop, or a mobile, or on a tablet. The control systems, we looked at how monitoring can be involved in that. And cloud service provider is the guy that is directly responsible. So a cloud service provider could just be the SaaS guy, or the PaaS guy, or the infrastructure guy. But it doesn't necessarily, there's no one person for one thing. So it's whoever you're relating with is your cloud service provider. So the IS guy could be relating with the PaaS guy, and that could be, so the guy you're directly relating to, who is directly accountable for your service, is your cloud service provider. And it's hosting infrastructure and the cloud customer, as we all know. Okay, so what is risk? You all are risk managers, so I'm not going to try to define risk, but its standard definition, I think, my ISO 27005, is that risk is the effect of uncertainty on an objective. So I've got an objective. The uncertainty around that objective is my risk, because I'm not always sure, right? And everyone, when you say risk, everyone says uncertainty, you're never sure. But can we do something about that uncertainty is what we're trying to do here. So we see that with cloud supply chains, one of the major issues is that it is always associated with the decreased visibility, of security controls. What do I know that the next guy is doing? What do I know that the fourth guy, the fourth tier or the third tier are doing with my data? Everyone that is processing your data one way or the other, either storing it, processing it, managing it, or just passing through their infrastructure, is part of the supply chain. And they are one way or the other supposed to be accountable for your data. But as long as you cannot assure that they are doing the right things, then you really cannot be 100% certain that you can assess that risk completely.
Sorry to be a pain, I actually totally agree with you.
Yeah.
But decreased visibility of security controls is largely about increased transparency of whatever it is you're using. So if the transparency of your service provider's service is decreasing visibility because it's increasing the transparency. I see your point, but I think we'll take it up, because this, I don't want us to, I'm trying to go somewhere, but this is discrete visibility. Let's just put it that this research or this work sorry, you're going to say something.
Yeah, just to underpin what you said, Olu, because I think there's an element that you're both right. Someone put to me the other day, and said, at the end of the day, Paul, is it a case that a move towards macro transparency is leading to more micro vulnerability? And people are overlooking the plumbing, so to speak, and people are getting into stuff.
Yeah. Well,
so I just wanted to throw that out as a food for thought.
Well, I can read it. Okay, so we'll move on. Well, I guess we'll deal with that again. All right, it said increases, with the supply chain risk will increase with as much as the on-demand keeps going on, as much as the dynamism of the cloud keeps going on, the on-demand or the automated nature of the cloud, the supply chain risk would increase. Like we talked about the recent outages, they were very much down to like the automation, and things just happened. And things just happened because you didn't really put your thoughts to it. You didn't sit down somewhere and think, this is how my system works. And the day any outage comes, you kind of just have to tail back and say, why are we affected? Why are we down today? Or why are we not down tomorrow? So some of the examples that I gave you from the report was that there is a poor level of information security practices within lower tiers. The more you go away from the first tier or directly connected, every other person is worried about the cost. Every other person is worried about profit. Every other person just wants to make money. And they're offering you a service, and they cost. And then, people almost cheat people down the tier because they say, do you want to do it? Don't you want to do it? I'll just give it to someone else. And because they want to do it, but they cannot be sure to assure it, they just say, give us the contract, we'll do it, but we might not do it very well. And they have vulnerabilities, so they might buy compromised software or hardware because they want to be cheap. They want to do it quickly. And software vulnerabilities as well in supplier system. Okay, so last year we carried out the research, and that research was just saying, we're looking at supply chain, but we weren't really sure where to situate the research. They're like, okay, we know that CSA, Cloud Security Alliance, has got these 12 treacherous threats that they've classed, and those are the 12 of them there. But so we did a survey, and we got out to professional, we got 62 of them to respond to our survey, and we said, which of these threats are supply chain related? And from the graph there, or from the graph there, you can see, or on the chart here, you can see that many of them were, or all of them are in one way or another, depends on what level of agreement you get with the professionals. But, data breaches, shared technology vulnerabilities, malicious insiders are very much supply chain things. You never know who the disgruntled employee is at your third party, and that releases your data because it's unencrypted.
and they have access to it, right? So we gradually was able to say, okay, since this is real, and since there is something here, we might as well progress. So this was one of the preliminary surveys we carried out. So then, we then gradually move into risk assessment. What are we looking at when we say cloud risk assessment? Everyone does cloud risk assessment, right? And I know you guys are risk managers. I'm sure you must have done lots of risk assessment for the cloud. But do you use the NIST protocols, the frameworks? Do you use the ISO ones? Do you use this or do you use that? Yeah, everywhere, right? You can use CSA as well because they do a CIQ. But it depends on how you interpret the data. Anyway, so the cloud risk assessment is that step-by-step repeatable process that is used to produce an understanding. So the idea of risk assessment in the first place is to understand the system, identify where the risks are, try to analyze it, and then to evaluate what it is. And we then asked this same professional that did the last survey, was in the same questionnaire. He said, what are the common risk assessment methods that you use to analyze your risk platforms? But what we found out was that over 3/4 of them did something very qualitative, did something that was from someone's head and someone's mind and someone's, relating it to new data that they just got, or something that was not very concrete. NIST, actually I was looking at the NIST document. The NIST document says that they don't worry about what methods you use, what factors you consider, but as long as if you do qualitative, do it with some level of data and try to explain why you gave a risk a low score or why you gave it a medium. But you see many risk assessment reports and you just say, well, okay, this is low. But what have you considered? Have you considered the supply chain? Have you considered the third guy? Have you considered the value of the application of the asset? Have you considered, the vulnerabilities that are involved and what are the threats that you looked at and how do they all add together, or the predisposition conditions? So all of that should be put in place, and somehow you should be able to score all of that before then you come up with that low or that medium or that high score. But we don't get enough of that. So you look at things like mathematical models or simulations and all that, they don't get a lot because people think it's a waste of time. And I know the arguments, and I think lots of the arguments are out there. It's a waste of time. There's not enough data, or there's this and there's that and that. But like I was saying to Olu the other time, that you have more data than you think. You just have to start.
So the methods that are used predominantly are non-scientific.
They're not. They're not. It's off someone's mind. And the popular saying is keeping the wet finger, right? They say,
there can be a tendency to be prejudiced. So if an instance happened recently, to give that a high score.
Exactly.
It's never happened to get a low score.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it could be reversed in reality.
Yeah, pretty much. If
I was going to add one.
Yeah.
Sorry, but is that people lie.
Yeah. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that. No, but I guess there's a popular saying that says you never get fired for hiring IBM, right? Back in the days. That was the popular saying. You never get fired for hiring. So if you went with the best company on paper, and they had an outage, then you just say, well, they were the best. So we can't do anything about that. So I guess that's what happens with risk assessment. And what people say is that this is started because of organizations like COSO, the organizing sponsoring committee, that they came up with, this idea of quantitative is the best, just forget about this quantitative because it's for mathematicians or for scientists. And because it started like that, everyone jumps on it, and every framework you find is either pushing the qualitative or semi-quantitative, which is very low, but let's give it a 2. Very low, let's give it a 4, medium. Who says it's 2? Who says it's not 2.5? Who says it's not 3.5 or 4? Who gives the numbers? And there's a lot of problems with that. Anyway, so what are the hindrances to a more comprehensive risk assessment? And this is what we found. And this is where, transparency and visibility comes in terms of cloud customers, when they answer this question, say, I don't know what my provider is doing. I don't know who my provider's provider is. And when I send them, like mostly the small and medium businesses, when they send questionnaires out, say imagine you send a CIQ to Amazon. It's just going to give you a blank answer, right? Oh, here's it. This is what we gave to the last guy. No one's going to look at yours differently from the other person because they're thinking you're wasting our time. Do you want our service? or not. So the transparency is not really there. And the dynamic supply chain, organizational culture, people just keep going on. Because comprehensive risk assessment, my boss did it this way, I might just do it the same way. It's qualitative, it's low, it's medium, it's high, whatever. You just keep it. And if you notice risk assessment reports, right, they never change. It's low last year, it's low this year, it's going to be low. Consider until there's an outage or there's an attack, and they'll be like, okay, maybe we should consider that a bit more. And then you give it, say, oh, that was just one off. Because you always get it right most of the time. Risk will never happen all the time. When was the last time that British Airways has this kind of massive? It's a while back, right?
You don't get sacked for 99.9%.
Yeah, so it's the 0.1 that the point exactly. Yeah, and another reason why people say is the cost. There's a cost implications to this, right? To get these guys ideally, one of the things we're pushing with this research is that everyone can do this risk assessment, even if it's quantitative. All you have to do is to be properly calibrated, and in the sense of don't be too subjective when you give like this estimations. Try to give it within a confidence interval of what you think you're sure of. And you never get it that wrong. Even if you're less or more, it doesn't matter, as long as we can simulate it and get some value out of that. Anyway, then duration of exercise. And I have seen many qualitative assessments being done on paper. In someone's office, seated, just thinking about the thing and just writing it down. It shouldn't really be that. Once you start to get into questioning what you're doing, I think you get better at doing risk assessment. So,
you get to know what questions to ask.
Exactly. So, assessing this cloud risk, what are the gaps? We've talked about the significant pieces of what we're working with being managed by external providers, so you don't really know what those other guys are doing. And there is an inherent risk in the supply chain, which we should be aware of. There's this transparency that is required, trust. You want to find out security controls from someone, they have to trust you. There's a level of, trust that should be established between both sides before those kind of data come here, and accountability. And those people on the lower tier, are they accountable? Do they want to be accountable to you? Also, it's now gradually being established that the traditional risk assessment models are no longer sufficient. They're too static. They occur once a year, like many of us would know, and they don't take into cognizance this integrated supply chain.
Again, sorry, I keep interrupting, but
That's fine.
You've raised a hugely good point, that doing the risk assessment is one thing.
Yeah.
Taking notice of what came out of it is
something
completely different.
Yeah. But that boils down to risk management, right?
Yeah.
Who's taking it on from the assessment stage and doing the treatment or doing the...
We can look at it and say, oh dear, this is looking bad. Oh, go on, sort it out.
Yeah. The accountability part of it, I see, and I know when we always list risk and put a risk in the risk register, you say there's a risk owner, but then the guy that did the risk assessment is only going to remember the risk owner the next year when he's about to do it and say, oh, what happened with this?
Well, we stuck it up, some of it went red.
Yeah.
This is a major risk.
Yeah.
Red.
Yeah.
Right? And do we put next to it who is due to fix it?
Yeah.
No, we don't. It's just we have identified it as a major risk.
Anyway, well, yeah, that's what we see anyway. So, what do you note? These two things, we've tried to establish this weak link or this weakest link or the supply chain aspect to. So these are very well documents. It's managing the risk of supply chain can only be as effective as managing that of the weakest link, and the strength of the supply chain depends on the strength of the weakest member of the supply chain. Then you always ask, who is the weakest member? How do I find out the weakest member? And that's where the research comes in. But one thing that I want to also put across to you guys is that when you look at your cloud service and you have 5, 6, or 2 major providers that your data is going through and they're processing it, a comparison between those 2 is your first look, right? You want to be able to compare those 2 guys to see which of them is compliant to something or doing something right or has controls in place, and then you know enough about them. So we're going to introduce you to our research, which is, this model came out of the research, which is cloud supply chain cyber risk assessment. Cloud supply chain cyber risk assessment, and we've changed the name too many times and different things just to make it fit one way or the other. But this idea has come from an operational research, manufacturing, logistics, things that have happened before is what we're trying to bring back into. And there's an idea called systems thinking. And this is key to this research. And systems thinking is always looking at a complex problem and trying to understand, what components make up this complex problem. Can I look at this complex thing from beneath the hood? Can I just see what makes this thing what it is? The interconnectedness. Can I try to understand it? Can I reliably estimate that if I touch this, this will happen? And that's the idea of this. So what we've looked at is that before we carry out the risk assessment, we have 3 aspects to this model. And the first one is the supply chain mapping, or you can call it data flow analysis, looking at the cloud service, looking at the components, and saying there are 5 components that make up the service. There's this provider, there's this pass, there's this SaaS, there's this identity guide, monitoring, billing, blah, 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 database, and everything. Try to map them all out. See where they're hosted, see how the data flows from them to you. See if this or that, like we talked about the Amazon example of, is it down right now and other applications. If people had mapped this out, they would have figured that out while they did the risk assessment of the application, but they didn't, right? So, or maybe some did, I'm not sure. So that's one aspect of it. So we start with that, look at the components that make up the cloud service, do that mapping. And then do an assessment, do something called a decision support analysis, where we're going to try to assess each of the suppliers and compare them with one another. Those that we found that are important to this application, we're going to try to score them based on some risk factors or security factors that we've identified. And then we're going to do the risk analysis. So early this year, we conducted a Delphi study. A Delphi study requires you to get consensus from professionals. We got 15 of them to take part in the research. And that's what we were trying to do. We gave them a case study, looked at a particular application, we dissected it and said, here is a supply chain. If you had this cloud service and you wanted to assess the risk of this cloud service, what are the factors that you will look out for? And because so many research has gone out before us that have done, assessing customers, maybe if you've chosen a cloud provider before, you must have looked at some metrics to choose. It might be cost, it might be security, it might be, performance and this and the SLA and all that kind of stuff. But not one has been concentrating, or not one has focused directly on security. Just say, I just want to base this on security and I want to exhaust security options. What are the security factors that I need to look at? So that's what we did with this research. And at the end of it, we got 52 security criteria, and we grouped them into 9 target factors. 9 target security dimensions. And some of them include different systems, hosting, data security, maturity of the security assessment process, maturity of the operations. What do they do when they do backup? How do they do login? Data breach handling. You can imagine now that the day of GDPR, yes, people will want to notify us on time. I think that's why British Airways notified us on time. Because if you were before now, those things have been kept for a bit, and when they're settled, then they tell everyone. But GDPR makes it very important that you have to let people know. So you have to look at things like identity and access management. What does this provider use? What do the other ones use? Encryption, application security. Depending, now this is the case where these are factors that you now need to think of which of them affects you, which of them do you need to consider, and then you can use them within your own environment to assess this. So this is just a branching in. I just wanted you to be aware of what we did to get these factors. So here is the model, and this is how it works. You have a cloud service, you find all the components that make up that cloud service.
So, on the previous slide,
yes, sir.
Were they weighted at all, or just, were these weighted in any way?
No, you might choose to.
Okay.
I think you might choose to, and it makes sense to do that, because if you think that the operational security is more important to you than encryption, you might give it a 2 and another 1, but I'll tell you where we can use it and exactly what you're trying to do, because you can fit it in to the way it pleases your organization. Okay. Yeah, that's actually a very good question. Thank you, sir. All right. So this is the model, or this is the description of how the model works. You have a cloud service, you get the components that make up that cloud service. You do a supply chain map or a data flow analysis just to understand how everything works, so that you get a full idea. You're not blind to where this could be. If you're blind, maybe you have a 1-2% thing that you're not aware of, but at least you try to find that. And we do the supply chain, the supplier assessment, which is where you compare them based on those 9 target security factors that we found. And from there, you will start to get weakest link, and then from what, looking back at the NIST, so in case some of us are aware of that, there are different types of analysis. There's a vulnerability analysis, there's a threat analysis, or there's an asset analysis. So you're looking at it from an asset point, a vulnerability, or a threat, depends. But now we're going to be looking at it from vulnerability and the asset. The asset is the cloud service, the vulnerabilities are the weakest links within this particular system. Then you might, you can expand that if you want, but at least from that first time, let's look at this service from the eyes of those 2 analysis approaches. And from there, you should be able to get all the threats, all the vulnerabilities, and list out your risks. What are the risks that if this guy was impacted, what happens here? If this database was corrupted, what happens with my availability and all that type of stuff. At the end of that, you get a number of risks, and like we all know, because we're all risk managers, you are able to arrange them in the order of preference. You keep them. I think this. I need to look at this risk first before I assess that and then So whichever one you choose first goes through a risk analysis tool, the simulation tool that's built out of Monte Carlo, and then you get a risk value. The good news of this is that we're trying to come up with a risk value as against a score. And then we'll try to talk about that, because I guess someone will say, oh yeah, how do you come up with that? So I guess we should go into that. So what I just described there.
Just another quick question. How do you get from a quantitative analysis to a qualitative analysis, which is what gives you your pound sign?
How do you go from qualitative to quantitative?
Quantitative. You got to the quantitative.
Yeah, here, right?
Yeah. And now how do you get to the qualitative, which gives you the risk value?
No, the quantitative is where the risk value is going to come from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now qualitative is, what's the impact on my company?
How much
is it going to cost me?
Yeah, based on this, we're going to get this risk value, which is, in the right definition of quantitative, is based on numbers.
Yeah.
And those numbers are based on values.
Yeah.
So you see, so that value is what we're talking about there.
Okay, so you're kind of mishmashing it together. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, excuse my ignorance of the question I'm about to ask.
Yeah.
Is this a methodology or a proper accredited certification model?
Oh, it's a methodology. No, it's not sufficient.
Well, I'll tell you what I say.
It's like one, maybe I'll publish it.
No, I'll tell you what I say at the moment. I'm working.
No, we're not there yet.
I'm working on a health check methodology that I'm keen to use at some of the exhibitions that we've got coming up.
Okay.
Principally IP Expo. I love how all this bolts together.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking this could constitute a means of doing a health check on somebody to, for the validity of their architecture.
I'll be
But I have to take it apart.
Yes,
No, because I like this. It's clever.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, okay. So this is how it works, right? So this is what I've explained, and we run through it again. So we know we're decomposing it. We are assessing the suppliers. We are identifying the weak links. We are making reasonable estimates of their risk values, and then we putting it through the simulation to get value out of it. And the value, we can always stress the idea of monetary terms. And we can't stress that enough as well. We can say it, but everyone says, hey, what does it matter? But there's a simple example that I always talked about, and people gradually warmed up to it. And I said, if you go to your boss and say, sir, we've got a vulnerability and I need to fix it with £10,000, right? And he says, it's not worth £10,000, the business is not doing too well. Or what's going to happen should they have that impact? And I say, oh yeah, we're going to be down for a day. And he says, a day? Oh yeah, we can. He says, we might be able to, can you think of something else? I say, well, because we can't tolerate a day, a day will kill the business, will destroy us. Okay, so can you think of something else? Oh yes, sir, I can. But if we spend 50,000, we'll be down for 6 hours. We can still be down for 6 hours. Come up with something else. We spend 100,000, we'll be down for an hour. You understand? And then he at some point makes the boss begin to think and say, okay, this is business. This is not this guy, because security, like they always say, is not something you can quantify. I can't tell you that if you invest 100,000 in this security kit, the business is going to make 1 million tomorrow. It's not going to happen. But I can sure tell you that at least we're going to be safe enough. We don't know when the next the next attack is going to come. But at least So it helps you to have that cost-benefit analysis, that conversation that is very worrisome. Like just tell your boss, oh, the value of that risk is low. Oh, what does low mean? Right? Oh yeah, it just means that one in a year we might, or 1 in 2 years or 10 years. Low is very subjective. It depends on who is speaking. If you ask the next guy, you might say, oh, it's medium. What does medium mean? And Seti explains it. But when you say money, the business automatically converts it to their turnover, and they can. Yes, sir.
Somebody said to me, at the stage of detection, it's already too late.
Oh yeah.
How is this applied so you can be proactive and prevent stuff happening?
Well, that's how you can be applied is think through your system a bit more while you're assessing it. Okay, you build the system, fair play. But the first time you try to assess that risk, which is why the cloud computing mantra is assess your risk continuously.
Right.
Right, because it changes every time. So the moment you see that anything changed, assess your risk, or just make it a continuous effort.
Because as you rightly said, I think earlier on, there's a lot of big organisations, they're not attacked once, but they're attacked repeatedly, and no sooner is one particular flaw patched or resolved, they find another area of weakness, and it's basically just by weight of pressing against the fences come down. Because if they know that one organisation has got a honeypot of data, British Airways case in point, 400,000 banking records, for example, you can't tell me that those people that have successfully hacked BA aren't going to try again another day.
Oh, they will. They'll be back. And if they don't try BA, they might try EasyJet, they might try Ryanair, they'll try someone else, just to find something else. And then you realize with risk assessment that it is always with the guy that sounds like a single point of failure. Right, there was another outbreak that happened, or another attack that happened recently, where I think it was in the auto industry. There's this company that does contracts for many of the auto providers, and they had all the designs for specific things in different cars, and they were attacked. And so that means all the designs for all these automakers was taken away, because they were just the guy in the middle of it, and they didn't, and their security was, but then the automakers just want the product made, but they forgot about the design itself, which is the outcome.
I'll answer your question slightly differently, in the same way, in what Olu was saying, I'm saying as well, it's happened to be Olu. I know it's easier after the fact, but if BA had said, if someone had said, well, look, there's a risk, this link in our supply chain could cause us to have a 500,000, £500 million fine, whatever. If that's how much it would cost us, what would it cost to fix? If the answer to that, to mitigate that, was, well, it can continue network monitoring. It was 2 weeks, they were inside for 2 weeks. Continue network monitoring, but that's going to cost us 100,000 a year. The cost of 100 grand a year versus half a million.
Well, that's my point. It's about how you get the guy to pay the 100 grand to stop the 500 million pound fine.
I think that's the argument.
Because you're 100% right.
Yeah, I think that's the argument. Actually. So anyway,
I think there's another argument which is just about being touched on, is that certainly in the travel industry, everybody uses the same software.
Yeah.
So
if you hack one, you hack the rest. And I think the first day you get it 2 months successfully, you try the next guy.
It's not just that, the actual vulnerabilities are published on CVEs and CWEs.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not rocket science.
I think it's the same with finance, it's the same with law, right?
Yes.
It's the same with all these organizations. I think finance amongst them seem to be the guys on top of their game. The law guys are still catching up, and I saw an article today that was saying exactly that, saying all litigations, all documents are with the lawyers. All you need to do is get into them and find out what's going on, and then you can find secrets of everyone.
Once you've got one system, you've got the lot.
Anyway, okay, so how do we apply the model to assessing the risk? So we look at this case study. A CRM provider has incorporated several components. Like we talked about, these components are always assembled, right? They brought components into this cloud offering, their CRM application. And that part of those services include billing, social search, searching for users within the application, database identity management. So how does the provider apply this model in assessing the risk of the cloud service? So they've been able to find out all these components. They found out the component providers, and they say, how do we, bring this together? So you come up with a data flow, a supply chain of that nature that tells you where everything is sitting. Automatically, just looking at this from anyone, you can automatically see the effect of the first IISA, right? The IISA guy already looks like, oh wow, what's he doing there? Well, you say this is fictitious, this is just something you made up. But I might as well just write AWS there, because there's an aspect of this that is real, right? So you have all that connection. So you can almost tell your link where you're connected to, how you're connected. And so when you come to, you've listed them all here, you've done all that. When you come to looking at them more, more in depth, looking at the companies one at a time, finding out the data. When was this last time this guy did this? Well, what does this guy say about their infrastructure, their hosting, their data securities, everything. You can then look at that, look at all the information you have, look at this, and start giving an estimate of something. So this is where we look at the suppliers. So we're looking at those 9 target security dimensions I talked about that we found from the Delphi study. This is where they come into play. And then we list the suppliers that we think our data will be going through that are very important to us, which we need to pay a little more attention to. But then you say, okay, how does someone come up with this cost? They just kind of random stores. Then we've talked about the supply chain mapping. We've talked about gathering data on these target security factors. But then you don't just get one guy to give that score. You get stakeholders, the business owner, the technical guy, the one other person. Let's come together. Let's see these things. Look at the data that we've got, and let's score it. But one thing that is always happening is that humans are very good at scoring, and sometimes they get it right. But they are bad at integrating the data together. So you can score it, but then if you don't have a model of some sort to help you run through the data and tell you really where you're looking at, you might just actually think, oh yeah, I think this guy has got an 8-7 somewhere. See, imagine this database guy has got a 3 there. But it's not the weakest link, is it? If you look down, this custom guy is the weakest link. I couldn't put them all in the same sheet because of the long sheet, that's why I had to break it down. But so this is a continuation. From here, you kind of go there, and then the Z scores are over there before you get the weakest link. Well,
because it's not mature doesn't mean it's no good.
Exactly. That's the point. Actually, from that research on the Delphi study, some of the respondents said, how can I understand the maturity of the operation security enough? He said, I'm a small business myself, and I get contracts and do things for people, but they give it to me anyway. But I don't have the mature security operation, so I don't know how to score this one. I'm not going to, do you see what I'm saying? So it depends, like you said, you could score this better and score that less. It depends on how you want to push it, and that would also make you get a different result depending on where your priorities are. So that's where this is very useful in terms of putting your priorities where you think it should be.
It's
right?
also the big thing that was just said about waiting, because
exactly.
the maturity of the operational security is relatively irrelevant.
Yeah.
School.
In the grand scheme of things. Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things. If it works.
Yeah, pretty much. So I guess it's all about what you think. If it's encrypted, then you want that. If the application security processes are good, but the operation is just catching up, maybe they don't give you, information on data bridges. Maybe their login is not very good. But the application security, they code properly. They do security testing on their code. All that stuff. You look at all that and bring it together depending on what you think. Okay, so based on that, we're then looking at that vulnerability data, we're looking at the assessment of the security of the suppliers, looking at the asset itself. We can start coming up with some list of risks. I'll just put this risk there, not to try to talk about the threats and this and that. But here you can see availability of CRM service based on DDoS of the particular provider, because that provider is linked to an IAS and is linked to the identity gap. Also, you can see cross-site scripting on the vendor. On the site vendor is our weakest link. So cross-site scripting might seem like a sensible thing, and this actually is an attack that happened in reality. So to an organization. And or a disgruntled employee puts our data on the darknet, from that Oxford database. He corrupts data and still puts it on the darknet. This can happen, this happens. We see this can happen many times. So these are scenarios, right? Like we all do risk assessment. We know that we paint these scenarios, they're not always accurate, but they are our idea of what we think could happen. Right? But then if you do it with the consensus of people, with a number of people coming together to come up with this list, A might say, this is what I think is a risk, B might say that, we all come together and then decide which of those risks to look at. So in this case, based on the fact that we found a weak link, based on the fact that we think those guys are not very compliant with many things, we're going to try to assess the risk of number 2. And that's where this comes in. I'm not trying to go very mathematical or go, with diagrams and this and that, but let's just try to give you an idea of what we're trying to do here. One first thing that you should remember is that these estimates are being given based on bounds. And those bounds are like 90% confidence interval, so there's a 5% chance that I'll be wrong, that it'll be lower than what I estimated. There's a 5% chance that it'll be higher than what I estimated, but I'm hoping that it's going to be for the probability of the risk occurring, it's going to be between 5 and 10% for an attack of 1 a year. Right? So I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but the probability that's going to happen once a year is 5% or it's 10%. Depends on what I've seen, data that I have, and what the estimates I have. So what's the impact cost? So the input cost is, maybe it's just going to affect this guy for an hour, it's going to cost him 5,000. You can look at impact based on maybe the number of customers that get their refunds because you didn't give them the service, or that they leave your service, or reputation, or you have to release an article to a news organization to say, sorry, we're clear on this one, or that there are a lot of things that happen, or maybe a CEO is fired, or a CIO is fired because there was an impact. You can look at anything that could happen based on the risk and then give your estimate. So you can be on the low side or on the high side, depends on how risk averse you are, or how risk, how you work on risk in giving an organization. So, and then the frequency of the events. This also is a very important thing. If Ryanair is going to do a risk assessment today, and they're going to look at exactly the same scenario of British Airways, their estimates are going to be different, right? Because they're going to also say, we'll get attacked this year.
Very different.
Right. We're going to, and I think that's how risk assessment works, because if you look at what has happened within your industry, which now thankfully we have this information being shared regularly within the industry, we can build more into it, because before now there used to be very limited information on what's going on out there. But now we are hoping that more of this data will be with the ICO, we can get most of this data back. So when we do the risk assessment, so what we do is now get all these estimates, which is plus considering the controls that we have in place. We might look at the trends, the vulnerabilities, how important they are, calculate all that and use that. So you're not just going to come up with, so what do I think, 5%? No. You can look at the threats for that attack. You can look at the vulnerability that we're looking at, look at the data that we found, look at the supply chain map, look at the assessments of the suppliers, and then come up with a reasonable estimate. So in this way, I'm going to ask Pejman to give me an estimate. I'm going to ask Olu to give me an estimate. I'm going to ask Chris to give me an estimate, right? And each of them are going to give me different things. They're not going to talk to each other, but we're going to then merge their assessments together. But we're then going to say, well, one of them might be a better risk assessor than the other. That's where calibration works. Because before you start the risk assessment, you already try to analyze or ask which of you have done this before, what are you doing, and at the end of the day, we see, this guy is our risk assessor, or this guy is our business owner. And then between us, we're going to give them a rating, which makes it easy for the simulation. When it's merging their assessors, you might trust Chris more than Olu, you might trust Olu more than Pejman, you might trust them, different ways. And in that way, I don't know, I'm just saying. So in that way, you can merge those assessments together and you can come up with a better risk score. And then it gives you a reasonable bound, because at that end, you consider everyone's estimates. And you not just, so if one person might be very pessimistic, the other might be very optimistic about the risk, and then bringing everyone together comes into a reasonable point, as against one guy sits in his office. Anyway. So going through this simulation, we are then going to find the 5% percentile, which is what Monte Carlo will do. These things will normally come out as a Perth, distribution, and then you get a mean score, you get 95 percentile. So it depends. You might choose to say, okay, we'll always stay with the mean, or this particular risk will go with me, this particular risk will go with that 5% because we just don't want this to happen. This is not a scenario we're prepared for. We just don't want this part of it to happen. So it's sorry. So it's left to you to decide, how you want to play it. All right. So that's that. So what are the ambitions? What are we trying to achieve with this particular model? The decomposition of cloud services surely one of them, like we described. The fact that we can get objective risk results. That we're not just coming up with a service and say, all right, we're just going to assess it. We're trying to build a structured way, a systematic and a transparent way. Because with this risk assessment, if I did the risk assessment and I gave my boss the results, and he said, how did you come about this result? I might say, here is the details. This is all I considered while I got here. And he might do the same thing. So the repeatability of this risk assessment is at least higher than what we currently have within the industry. And then comprehensive quantitative risk assessment. We looked at the justification for quantitative because that helps you to do this cost-benefit analysis even better than you could ever imagine. And then we looked at the cloud supply chain because we always think that that is a missing angle to risk assessment. This is an angle that many people don't look at. And because you just look at the focal company and just looks at their service and consider less everything that happens around them. But if the US government can be doing it, or with vendor assessments, and lots of companies are coming up with vendor assessment and vendor scorings like BitSight and risk recall and all that. Those are things that we should be paying a little bit more attention to in this day and age. All right. So, in conclusion, this model has actually been designed, and this is where I wanted to come in. It's not someone will say, how will the customer know all these details that you're asking? We're not really going to be, at this stage, we situated it mostly with cloud providers. Cloud customers could use it, but they need to find a bit more information. That's where the transparency comes in. If they have enough information, then this becomes easier than for a cloud provider who generally know what they've incorporated into their service, and then they can do this better. And what we found out is also that this model, in comparing to other frameworks, other models, all the factors that we're considering for the supply assessment, they comply with industry standard, they comply, and this was not our thing, this is not what we wanted to do, we wanted to come up with something totally different, but we ended up getting something that's still in a way aligned. But what we think we've done is bring all the data together to a more reasonable, compact data that can be fed to an audience like yourselves, without having to speak with many channels. So lastly, it caters for the complexities that is involved with the dynamic supply chain or involved in cloud risk assessment and in response to the change. So when changes happen within a supply chain, it is easy now to go back to this thing and say, okay, now we change this particular identity provider, we change it to these other guys. Can we assess the risk of our service based on this change? And it becomes easy to slot it in and then see what has changed. Oh, it's still remaining the same. Are we going to stay status quo? Yes, okay. At least we've looked at it. As against we wait till next year while we do the next risk assessment. All right? So those are the references that we looked at, and thank you. Any questions?
I would first of all like to thank Olu for his. I really enjoyed that presentation, and I enjoyed the fact that he was prepared to take my little interjections.
That's right.
The only question, I mean, obviously everybody else gets to get the go. The big question I've got is, so much of it is about risk assessments.
Yeah.
And we haven't really hit risk management. How do we actually mitigate risk?
Okay. Well, yes. I think this was specific actually, because we're situating it around risk assessment. We realize that risk management is another thing, but then risk management is done either I'm transferring the risk, I'm accepting the risk, I'm treating the risk, it depends.
Yeah.
Right? So we can't, if we start to push it further and say, do it this way, do it that way, all we can say is, here is your metric, these are the numbers. So you look at your risk score, look at how much it takes to fix it. And if you can merge them together, then you know what your risk management is. But the whole idea of risk assessment is to be situated as a continuous rolling thing within risk management.
My argument would simply be that you can't assess how much it's going to cost to fix it if you don't know how it's going to be fixed, if you don't know who's going to be fixing it.
Well, I see your point.
It's not.
But I think risk assessment process starts with evaluating the risk.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and then the treatment, like you said, comes into the management angle of it, the monitoring and the changes of it. But yes, we might as well someday push this too, but for now.
Those last couple of slides, when it gave me numbers about how much it was going to cost me to fix my systems.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, yeah. Okay, so I'm getting KPMG in to fix my systems.
Yeah.
It's not going to be 5,000, it's going to be 55 million.
And 17% on your share price. It's the same thing.
Thank you, Paul. No, anyway, I've had my bit. And Andy wants to.
Chris, the scope of this talk was not risk management, it was risk assessment, which is different from risk management. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, it was about, but then that last bit was about risk management, and I'm just...
Yeah, well, gradually, no, I think it's a case for risk management.
Yeah, that's why I was asking the question.
Yeah, leading into risk management.
Yeah.
The second question is, maybe you decompose the services
Yes.
provided by a cloud service provider. One of the things you need to have a look is the efficiency of various services.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
So when you say efficiency, looking at the performance, right?
Well, I mean, you need to have some yardstick to compare one cloud service provider with another one, right? For instance, you may look at the downtime, or the average sort of mean time to failure, or mean time to fixing a bug or something like this.
Yeah. And some of those things are already here.
It is there.
Yeah. Because we have the SLA compliance with the availability of their service, their reliability, measurement of their downtime or uptime, what they promised. So those are part of, we're going to measure that as part of one risk factor, as part of that. So but if you say, how do we measure that based on the data that we have? If this guy promised me that's 9.95, when I signed my contract and all I got was that's 9.9 the last time I checked, that means he's already away from that line.
But did you say that you specifically target this model specifically as security?
Yes.
Efficiency, performance, and price to one side, so it is concentrated on
this is security.
Just.
That's why everything that is on there is security. It's not, it might be physical, it might be logical security, but it is one way or the other leading to availability or confidentiality.
How long does this, tying to what Andy said, how long would such an assessment take to complete from start to finish? And does that vary on what type of enterprise it is?
Exactly. I think it varies on what our enterprise is, it varies on what data that they have before we start. And ideally, it depends on how many risks we find as well. If it becomes an uncovering of too many things that, this has not been checked before, there's no vulnerability assessment there, we don't have any report on this, then it becomes a bit longer. But ideally, we're looking at 1 to 2 days.
And would an end client receive a report at the end of the process with some kind of score or results, for want of a better word, on that report?
Oh yeah, sure. The quantitative scoring will come back into a qualitative.
And what happens to the report? So let's say I'm the client.
Yes.
You do the assessment for me.
Yes.
I get my report, my scorecard, whatever.
Yes.
And I then come back to say, oh look, okay, you've just scored me 3 out of 10 and I'm in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And I've got that in my hand. Yeah. Do I give that back to you and you tell me how to fix it?
Well, it depends. Yeah, that becomes the consultant.
Or can you tell me how you can?
I'll just put my consultancy brain on.
If you tell me that I can drive, if you tell me that you've done the assessment, you give me my scorecard, 3 out of 10, and you can drive a bus or a train or a tank or whatever straight through all my firewalls and I'm in a mess.
Yeah.
And what do I do with that assessment report that I get from you?
I think one thing that we need to, what I'm trying to go back to now is say, let's say we do a risk assessment that looks at 10 risks and give them different risk values based on the confidence that we got from the guys that did the risk.
Was that like 1 out of 10 or?
No, it would be values. It would be financial values for each risk.
Right, okay.
Right. But then, it then becomes a conversation that we need to have with the organization to say, to fix this particular risk that we found, might require maybe changing your vendor on that side or require you putting this API gateway within your organization. Right. Or
but are you able to prescribe the medicine once you've identified what the
yes.
Right.
That becomes a technical thing, and that's something else. Because
Because it seems to me that you've got a fantastic assessment tool, as per what Andy's just said. It's a question, I mean, I'm sorry for being commercial, but it is what I am. I can't help what I am. At the end of the day, it seems to me that you've got a fantastic product that you can monetize the back end. Once you've, as Andy said, you've done the assessment, you've shown where the pain is, you know?
No, I guess it's something that obviously this is still...
I just don't want you to miss where the money is, Ollie.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
One of your slides, you had the quote by Reagan around trust is verified.
Yes.
And there's been a lot of chat recently that's out of context, because what it actually means is you don't trust at all, which leads on to what you're thinking about zero trust and that approach to saying trust nothing and therefore follow that.
Start. Well, zero trust is an idea that I don't think would work with the cloud. Let's put it that way. Because you must trust someone at the end of the day. The cloud is what it is. It's now a thing of take it or leave it, right? For some cloud aspect. If you're a big boy, like a big organization, yes, you can demand trust and verify, right? But if you're one of the low-end guys that just need a cloud service, you don't need to trust Amazon, you just give them your data. I don't know if that makes sense, but you know, it's become that level of, if you want to do it this cheap, and the other, you know, the argument with the cloud is cost for many smaller organizations. It's less security than cost. It should be more security than cost, but it's less. So what you see really is that people are like saying, okay, let's do this faster, let's do it quicker, let's do it without, you know, different complications.
It's commoditized.
Well,
you know, it's cheap, go and buy it, use it. The assumption is if something's cheap and commoditized, it works and it's good. And what you're saying is actually that's not necessarily the case.
No, it's not necessarily the case, because you might end up being in more trouble than you were while you were in your data center.
Just tying what the gentleman there said, is 100% right. There's a lot of people who have looked, for example, like at AWS Frankfurt and other things, of non-partitioned, non-segregated archives, put all the data into one place, trusted the blue chip brand name, and clearly from what you're saying, it's not the right assessment to do, because ultimately there's nothing there to stop one data set and one data block
going into the other.
Correct.
I don't want to hog anything, but I did a talk here in this room last week, and I spent the last 3 or 4 slides talking about zero trust, and my conclusion was, forget it.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, well,
I mean, why? What, forget zero trust?
Yeah. Simply because I have seen nothing that persuades me that the zero trust model can actually fly. The model just doesn't work to me. And I spent 3 slides proving it.
Might be an interesting conversation.
Yeah,
Happy.
I might be sharing those slides, Chris, on the IRMA site, so that I think you can provoke a very good debate with it.
I think.
Anyway, gentlepersons, it is that sort of time where we're all probably looking forward to a glass of orange juice or something. What I would like to do is to thank Olo so much for his presentation. What I thought was great about it was a nicely constructed presentation around what is actually a very, very difficult topic.
Yeah.
And I think you presented it incredibly well today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So anyway, let me just I need to make this clear just in case there's anyone here that thinks.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That there's anyone that thinks, okay, because we're trying to do a case study, we're trying to try out this out with different organizations and try out the idea, see how people can use it to assess risk, not just an idea that we think and then write on paper and get out of it. We want to actually use it. We have one lined up this month actually, towards the end of the month, and anyone within this place that thinks, they might, maybe a cloud provider, you think, okay, you might want to look at us do this, or you have a cloud provider you're working for, and say you've got this model that you want to try out for a day or something. Please, we'll welcome you giving us a shout, and then we'll appreciate that. And lastly, I've got a survey here. It's anonymous, don't be afraid, please. Just give us an honest feedback on what you think, the model is about, what the service is about, you think, So, if anyone that wants one, I guess almost all of you will take it. Thank you.
So yeah, I'll take it.
Before we go. Yeah.
Yes, sir, I would appreciate
I
it.
have to say, Ollie did call me up about this and said, you know, would it be okay with BCS to you know, get some feedback from Dean? And I said, absolutely, because that's what we do. That's our mission in life, is to try to assist when we can. So, it's non-commercial, so we just